Hello everyone. Since this is either a highlight, a standalone book, or the first episode in a series, I'm jumping in to remind you what the rules are for this podcast. First rule is, no real people stories. That means that any details from our own lives are merely anecdotal, we do not read books about real people, and we are not reading historical fiction. The second rule is that we are basing our analyses off of how the author treats characters and what they put them through. We are not judging the accuracy of the trauma, the accuracy of any actual conditions that may be portrayed, nor the authenticity of a character's reaction to that trauma or that particular condition. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. The hosts are not trained professionals, and their opinions come solely from personal experience. In this episode, we discuss fictional depictions of trauma and violence that may not be suitable for all audiences. Please take care of yourselves. Specific content warnings for each episode can be found in the show notes. Events in the media are discussed in approximate order of escalation. This episode contains spoilers.
Hi, I'm Nicole.
And I'm Robin. And this week, this fortnight on Books That Burnt, we are discussing Not Your Sidekick, the first book of the series of the same name. The Sidekick Squad is the series by C.B. Lee. And let's get into our factions. Yes, Sidekick Squad. Sorry, just double checking I had the series name right. Okay. The factions, we have Jess, Bells, Emma, Abby, M, Shockwave, Smasher, Captain Orion. This is a dystopia, and our first topic is gaslighting, that good old staple of dystopias where the government plays a major role. You get a lot of gaslighting.
Yeah. All right. So this one is very, very government-based. The interesting thing to me about this particular gaslighting is that the people doing it, the people propagating it, probably think that they're succeeding. So the major component in the story that matters to this is that a lot of this is propaganda or done through a school system gaslighting or done potentially through the Hero Institute and the Villain Institute where those people are living their lives. And they have literally electronic textbooks, electronic pieces of information that can be edited by the government and by other people to fit their narrative. And so as far as those people are concerned, everything that is changing how the public sees the people who they are recasting into their various roles and changing the history in those textbooks for, they think that that's all they have. And it just so happens that not all textbooks used to be electronic, and our main protagonist has physical copies of books from what, like 10, 15 years ago? Like, it's not that long even.
Yeah, I got the impression that, because I don't think her sister is that much older than her, but
6 years older.
Yeah, it's like either from her older sister or no, it wouldn't be from her parents.
No, it
they weren't educated
says
in
it's
this
her older
system.
sister.
Okay, yeah, then like 5 or 6 years older, like they hadn't yet switched to all electronic. Like maybe there was a mix or something.
Yeah.
And it's not like the textbooks are the only thing. Like, they're the biggest thing with the gaslighting, but I did want to
There are biggest sources of, like, direct misinformation there.
Yeah, I also did want to mention, as, like, a world-building detail that's, like, part of this picture, but isn't directly the gaslighting. Like, older media gets banned. Like, you know, stuff gets continually added to the list of, like, banned movies. List of anything, like, basically any movie we in the real world would have heard of is probably banned were about to be. Like anything that had fictional superheroes, like all of the Marvel and DC, and like any of those movies, banned. Comic books, whatever. Now they only have the ones of like the official, real, and I say in this world they are real-ish superheroes. They actually do have powers. That's the sense in which they're real. Superheroes and villains and stuff. And part of why that matters with the textbooks is like, since all the like official stuff about the superheroes is information from the government, and the government like working with comics artists and comics creators to make government propaganda of the actual superheroes and villains and stuff. It's just like that combined with the absence of other media creates this thing where directly or indirectly the government is making most media, or at least restricting most media that they can consume.
Yeah. There's a very solid thread of just, it doesn't matter what you thought yesterday. What we are telling you today is reality.
Mm-hmm. And like there's a scene where Jess like just knows a thing off the top of her head because like her parents are superheroes. She's like really, really into this. And the other kids act like she's an idiot and doesn't know what she's talking about. And the teacher tells her she is wrong. And she's like, but I knew this with my brain. I remembered this.
Right. I didn't have to double check your info sources to know.
And in fairness to the classmates like probably weren't into this as much as she is, and maybe didn't have their facts switched. They just learned it for the first time from this textbook that had been edited.
I was going to say, they might not have had a primary source before this class.
Exactly.
Well, and this isn't even a primary source. This is a secondary source. But they might not even have had a source before the class.
Right. Yeah, but being a teacher in this world must be so weird. And like, I am well aware that there is a way in which this does happen. The teaching of U.S. history is particularly rife with stuff like this. But the electronic textbooks changing,
it makes it a whole different thing.
Yeah. It makes it particularly insidious because it's not like, well, you know, the previous edition that was published that you can find in the back catalog or whatever had this, but then we've updated it. We know better now or something, or, you know, there's a little bit more of a way to check. And even when we also have electronic textbooks, that's usually an also, and they have like version numbers.
Plus
and stuff.
It seems like, I mean, our internet it's not just free and clear and whatever you want, but it's much closer to that than it seems like the net, quote unquote, is in this series. The internet in this series is very much seems to be a thing that is also just purely governmentally controlled. There's no indication of private anything. And there's a sense of like, well, we're going to look on the internet, but we already know like the government sites to go to and where we're going to find things. And like, there's no mention at all of anything personal, other than just like my favorite movies or my messages with my friends. And that's all. Versus like in our current reality, yeah, there's a lot of things on the internet that are incredibly misinformative. And there's a lot of things on the internet that like are incredibly controlled or monetized in a way that makes them essentially worthless for information. But then there's also a bunch of other stuff. Yeah, you can still make a blog and post whatever you want, which is part of the misinformation, but it's not all a giant narrative all the time. And it is in this book, very much so. Yeah, like it's not like, I don't know, it didn't get the impression that she uses the internet the way we use the internet. It very much felt like she uses the internet to find a job search and to check her messages, and that's all. That's all she does. And that kind of restricted information environment makes all the gaslighting easier to do. We had this for the minor character spotlight because, yeah, we're seeing it from Jess's perspective, but all of the kids at the school are getting gaslighted. It's everybody in functioning in their society, even to the point of like the one like superhero on stage that we see. Is just out there, just lying to the public. It's a stage performance, but it's a stage performance that is being sold to the public as reality, which is incredibly it's as though reality television was about safety and government controlled.
And since I want to make clear that gaslighting isn't simply lying. Like, we've said this before in episodes, but we haven't said it in this one. Gaslighting is more than just lying. It's it's convincing someone that their perception of reality must be incorrect because it contradicts whatever the gaslighting person is trying to get them to believe. And so kind of the quintessential moment of that in this book is when Jess knows the answer and the teacher and her fellow students are like, oh, you're wrong because it's not this thing. So like they are mainly the teacher, but also kind of ambiently the other students. Yeah. It's kind of this reinforcing, you can't trust your own memory. Look at this totally able to be changed from afar electronic textbook as the source of the real information.
Well, and also a big thing that we get a big hint of at that same superhero conference thing. There are questions asked of the superhero at the podium, and questions where it's like, hey, what is happening with this very true thing? And they go, that thing? That's a lie. And like,
it's not really a thing.
Yeah, that's not really a thing. And trying to convince that person that they are like, not just wrong, but like, it was never that way. What are you talking about? Those are really the two big instances in the book, but there's just this pervasive, well, if you think that, then you're the one with warped reality.
Right.
That's where it goes from lying to gaslighting.
And as a world building thing, like from like the author making this choice in the book, it fits the world really well. Like, in a way, absolutely. It's building a lot of the world. But yeah, it's not great for all of the people who aren't Jess, who thus far don't know that this is going on, that this is happening to them. On to Abby and kidnapping. Her parents are missing and have been taken. Abby does not get kidnapped in this one unless I'm suddenly forgetting something. Yeah, so she is the one left behind after the kidnapping, and she's the kid left behind after the adult napping.
We're still going to call it kidnapping. We don't really differentiate in our society, in our language.
Yeah. But yeah, her parents have been missing for weeks before she ends up hiring Jess. She's like pretending to be her dad and just all this stuff.
We should note that her hiring Jess, she's a teenager. She's a high schooler. So this is not a 7-year-old abandoned and alone, unable to feed themselves. This is a high schooler who is able to kind of mimic and impersonate at least one of her parents for a while, who is, already has access to the computers, already has been trusted with a lot of the tech and the understanding of how things work and where things are. So, it's important just for perspective, I think.
Yeah.
For anyone who has not read the book to understand, like, this is not a little child, but it is still a major problem.
Yes. In terms of, like, why'd the author pick this? Because, that they got taken is fairly straightforward. Like, this happened to this character's parents. But, like, it does a bunch of things for the narrative. It lets us have a kid having to be, like, an adult without killing off the parents, at least thus far. So I did appreciate that, because a lot of middle grade books, I mean, there's two ways to, generally speaking, there's two ways to have kid do an adventure without getting too bogged down by adults. It's either the kid goes very far away or the adults vanish.
Yeah.
And it was nice to have one where the adults vanish without, at least thus far, being dead. I don't know what's going to happen in the sequels.
It was interesting to me, too, is that Abby makes a decision here to pretend to be both herself and her parent instead of just
telling anyone that there's a problem.
Well, no, instead of just being one of those two people. Like, I understand.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
that's a good point.
I understand that for the person in government who she is trying to fool into causing problems if they know that her parents are missing, I understand from that perspective choosing to be her dad in that moment. But she also literally, in hiring Jess, tries to then also be the other teenager. That wasn't necessary. Like, it's such an interesting decision. Like, that was so much extra work for her, unless, and this is what I am unsure of because I don't remember. Okay. I'm unsure if being in the suit physically is a draining thing, and maybe she just can't handle that. But we canonically see her do it for, like, 8 hours or 5 hours a day. Like, you know, we see her do that a lot. So
she's really know. Okay, so there's a bit where when the thing has knocked out her power at the end of the book, they have to get her out of the suit because her power is what lets her animate it. So
right, but that's the thing, is it's a big plot point in the book that powers are draining.
Yes.
But she doesn't really seem to struggle with that. Like, you know, so I just thought it was an interesting decision because also Abby only goes over like 3 days a week. It's not every day. Like
Jess, yeah.
Or Jess, Jess. Well, Abby also, because at a certain point, like, they start hanging out outside of work. So, like,
right.
She's literally not there. Like, I don't know. I just thought it was a really interesting choice, both on the author's side and a choice that the author gave the character to just do that when they could very easily have not.
Okay, well, I would say
it was really funny. I don't think we should just dig into it. I just wanted to point out that, like, that's a very high school way of handling that. When you're just like, okay, I have to beat my dad. Oh no, I have to be both people. Like, no, you really don't. You really didn't. It just struck me as really entertaining.
Okay, but here's the plot that happens if she's just pretending to be her dad.
I don't think we have time to dig into that if we're going to talk.
This is one sentence.
Okay.
You know, several weeks into it, something happens. She's out of power at the suit, and then she's just there as Abby, and Jess freaks out and is like, "Why are you here? What do you mean these people are your parents?" Like, I mean, I just think you get that moment at a different time. I agree. Her solution is ridiculous. Her running back and forth is ridiculous.
But she could literally have just said, "Hi, I'm Abby. I work here. Also, I have like this super sealed lab so that things don't have problems with electricity and you won't see me." Done. Problem solved.
Okay,
Boom.
You solved it.
Yay. And then if she reappears later, like, well, of course she did. It's just not all the time. But instead she does this really wild back and forth running. It's very comedic. It would make a very good goofy moment in a TV show. But as far as like the trauma of kidnapping,
yes, she ends up in a position of having to be the one to rescue her parents, and only manages to rescue one of them by the end of the book.
Yeah.
So I'm expecting that book 2 is probably going to involve getting the other parent. That's my hope for Abby, at least, but I don't know.
That would be nice. I have a sneaking suspicion it's going to be a swap.
Oh, no.
They're going to get back their dad and then lose mom again. And, like, it's just going to be a whole, like, like, everybody else has too many resources and you can't handle... Or gets back her dad and she gets captured. Yeah, something like that. But, it'll be really entertaining. But yeah, it's such it's a thing where her character, she doesn't have really a way of handling it. Mm-hmm. And even when she and Jess start getting closer and talking more and hanging out and opening up to each other, there still really is not, she really still doesn't have a way of handling it. She has immediate gut instinct reactions, and that's it, because it's just been her trying to figure this out and survive on her own without them and panicking. And it's only because of the combination of the powers that they have and who they are, and the fact that they were slightly ahead of the authorities, really, in my opinion, means that it even works out at all. But it's very much this kid who's just kind of going through it alone and doing okay, because again, they're a teenager with all of the wealth and resources of their parents at their disposal and has superpowers, and so is functionally fine. But if you
emotionally
look at, emotionally unsupported, just kind of panicking for a while. And then the immediate first chance they have at oh, this could be my parent, immediately runs and jumps straight at it. And it just so happens that she's right, because it's a book. But there's so much of this trauma reaction of okay, but I gotta fix it right now. Cannot figure this out. Cannot wait. Cannot do anything else. Kind of a feel to her decision making in this story.
On to Jess and Betrayal. So, earlier we mentioned Claudia, Jess's older sister. They used to be really close, and then Claudia kind of stopped paying attention after it looked like Jess wasn't going to get powers. And then she's just kind of Claudia's just not around, really, for the first half of the book. And then, but Jess talks about her a lot, because she has she cares about her sister so much and really idolizes her and looks up to her. And then, so it feels like Claudia has been there the whole time, even though technically she hasn't. She has a huge emotional presence early on through Jess's narration. And then by the time we actually meet Claudia, she has dyed her hair blonde to look like her idol. And she's all in on the government's plan. And it's very ends justify the means. Which is not good when, spoiler, Captain Orion is bad. It's not good. It's not good.
I do want to point out, and this is not something I want to have an in-depth discussion about. I just want to highlight it real quick, because I think it's important for context with this.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jess and Claudia's family are not white.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a huge push for heroes to look like white, blonde hair, blue eyes as possible.
Yeah.
There is a, oh, you're not white enough to be a hero, so you'll be on the villain track, stated in the narrative. And so Claudia vanishing, dyeing her hair blonde, and then coming back to Jess and saying, you can be just like me. And Jess goes, no, you have rejected everything I care about myself. And what I cared about you. And all you have is your superpowers and your attempt to look like somebody else. And I want nothing to do with this.
And just in case anyone hasn't read this and is interested in what the rep is beyond non-white, Jess and Claudia, they're mixed Chinese Vietnamese because one of their parents is each.
Yeah.
And they're first generation immigrants because neither of their parents were born in the US.
Yeah. So, but it's more than just them. There's I don't remember. I think we know.
Oh, it's systemic.
Well, I was going to say I don't remember what Abby's heritage is. I know there's hints to something, but I don't remember what it was. But there's very much a racism stemmed with this that intermingles, but it visually it impacts the decision of Claudia coming back and visually looking different, looking whiter, looking quote unquote more hero-esque. And Jess in the book, there's this scene where Jess sees that change in Claudia and has a reaction to it of just, oh no. What is this? Why are you doing that?
Yeah, because also she's dyed to hair to look like someone who is according to the government, a hero, and according to all of her actions, definitely villainous.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, so... And then Claudia gives Jess the option of being her sidekick because she doesn't know that she has powers, or just nothing. She's like, you're either with me so I can use you as a tool, or just nothing. And
or I will disown you and maybe I'll help throw you in jail.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
And in terms of how the author like set this up, I mentioned Claudia having this like huge emotional presence early on, like so much so that when I reread this for recording this episode, because I had first read it a year ago, I had thought Claudia showed up like way earlier. Because, like, it felt like she'd been there the whole time. And so part of why I'm, like, making a point of, no, she really only shows up, like, halfway through the book, is because I could have sworn she was around, like, a lot earlier. But no, she's just elsewhere. And Jess is just thinking about her a lot and wondering what she would think and thinking about, how sad she is that their relationship isn't as close as it used to be, but also... the way that it was close was all predicated on just having powers, and then she feels bad that she doesn't have powers, and so she's got all this stuff tangled up and all this idolization of this person, and then not only does she feel rejected as a sister, but she also feels rejected as, like, she finally has powers, and all Claudia wants to do, if she knew about them, all she'd want to do is just use Jess for them and try and get Jess to hurt people.
Yeah.
Because, man, if Jess turned, given what her power is, when the government's, like, on a hunt for people to lock them up, if they had Jess...
the perfect instrument.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I suspect that the author thought of that before us, so we'll see what happens in later books. But, it would just be really bad. And so Jess finally has something to tell Claudia to be like, look, I'm just like you. I have powers. And at the moment that she could finally say that, she no longer wants to be just like Claudia.
Yeah.
Which is really powerful.
I think I know why why you might have thought that she was there earlier. Just functionally. There's a lot of times where Jess is alone with their little brother and will include Claudia in her internal monologue about things that are happening.
Yes.
And so it's literally, well, we're talking about the siblings now, and then her brother is physically there.
Right. And then Claudia isn't.
But Jess... is there in Jess's head, so.
Did you know Rob Thomas has been writing since the mid-90s?
The Matchbox 20 guy?
No, the guy behind Veronica Mars.
Oh, and iZombie.
And Cupid, Party Down, the Cupid reboot.
I haven't seen those.
Me neither, but we should watch them and then talk about them on our podcast.
Yes. We could call it the Rob Thomas...
No, not that one.
RobCast.
Every other Tuesday with Alex and MJ.
Find us at notthatrobcast.libsyn.com or wherever you download podcasts.
On to the wrap-up and ratings for the gratuity rating for Gaslighting. Backstory, off-screen, mild, moderate, or severe?
It's definitely on-screen. Well, it's off-screen, on-screen.
We're aware that it's happening more than it literally shows up, but the very particular moment that made us decide to do this as a specific event, I think is moderate.
I was almost going to go... So here's the question. I was going to... Okay, this will come into play in our... Yeah, okay. I agree with moderate for the actual things that are happening.
Yes.
It's more subtle and less...
It permeates the world building.
Yeah. I agree with moderate.
Okay.
I have other thoughts for our other section.
Okay.
Is what's happening there.
Kidnapping.
This is either moderate or severe. Ooh.
The actual kidnapping is backstory. The fallout from it is, I agree, moderate or severe.
Well, that's the question, right? Because the act is backstory, but everything, including a rescue attempt, is on screen.
Yes.
So I'm trying to. I think.
So there is no...
Okay, backstory severe?
Yeah, backstories, like,
I think backstory / severe, because
okay,
we have done that before when a backstory event is still occurring, so to speak.
Yeah.
Went on screen.
So if you're, like, sensitive to literal scenes of someone being kidnapped, then that's
here. Not this. Right.
Right. But all the after effects and stress from it is all there. I think severe.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
it's either moderate or severe, and I'm good with severe.
Yeah. And I mean, it, you know, it is a middle grade book. So this is not like
we'll
get
into that with our care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But how much there is it's a lot. Built up and woven into the structure of the book, which we talked about in the main section.
Yeah.
Integral, interchangeable, or irrelevant. The gaslighting is integral. Yep. The kidnapping,
I think might be interchangeable.
Yeah, I don't think it for the plot of. I mean, I'm sure for the arc of this series it'll matter more, but for this actual book, it doesn't matter why they're gone until the last 10% of the book. Yeah.
I mean, it matters that they are gone,
but not why.
But not why.
Like, it could have been true that they were sick, like, and it wouldn't have changed much.
Yeah. Betrayal. I want to... This one is really hard because it's really important to our main character.
But not really to the plot.
That's because it's kind of a last scene, last piece of a plot thing. So again, it's a question of like, I think you're right that this one will also matter more in future books. But for this book, it's not irrelevant because it is foreshadowed in things that cause the plot to happen.
It feels like Curse Your Sudden but Inevitable Betrayal, like a little bit.
Yeah, pretty much. It's literally that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say interchangeable because something was being built to that had to happen to justify a lot of other things in the book.
Yeah.
It didn't have to be this. This
but
makes
most of that
sense.
could have been most of it could have been accomplished with the person she was betrayed in favor of.
Yes.
It didn't actually need the betrayal in order for most of that to happen.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm cool. I'm voting interchangeable.
Yep. Good with that. Point of view for trauma and aftermath.
Care.
Whoops, care. Sorry. Care. Was it treated with care? The gaslighting. Yeah.
I think our readers were treated with a lot of care. I think that at no point in the book, even when, like, we were not shown anything until the character figured out that was not true. And we were also given the character's proof immediately as soon as we were given the gaslighting as it happened.
Yeah. I mean, like, you know, as an adult reader of this book, I'm like, oh, they're totally lying about this. Like,
right,
earlier.
Exactly. Like, oh no, that's not right.
but
even as a kid, you know, even if you believed it and you're like, what? And then the next sentence is our main character going, that's a lie. I have the proof. And it's like, okay. We know what's going on.
And it's not like we're going to know the history of, like, this one character was or wasn't a villain until, So, the point at which the character brings up that this is wrong is when it gets resolved.
Yeah.
Or clarified, not resolved, but clarified pretty immediately.
Right.
Then for the kidnapping.
I think this is treated with kind of a lot of care also. Its backstory, it's definitely impacting our character, who it is impacting much more than we are shown on screen. But we are shown that it is impacting her. It's just that it's not, we don't see her struggling and traumatized. We see her going, this is very difficult for me. This hurts. This is hard. But it's not being acted out in a way that would feel like it's coming out at the reader.
Yeah.
That's my argument.
No. I agree that it's definitely enough because,
I was just going straight up yes. You think it's just
yes?
enough?
Okay. No. I'm good with yes. Yeah,
okay.
because, it shows that emotional effects are there, but it emotionally allows room for there to be more plot than this person's parents are missing.
Yes.
Like it gives space for more than that. Yeah, in a good way. Then the betrayal.
This one is difficult because I think it's at least enough, but I also think it's the foreshadowing is
it's a bit heavy-handed
enough. Yeah. I think this is maybe enough because our main character was already kind of feeling a little bit left behind, not betrayed, but like abandoned even by this character.
There's an emotional promise that has been broken before the story begins.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think the actual act of betrayal is enough.
Yeah.
Because we knew, like, we were prepared as an audience. We were prepared for her to already not be good at this. not make good decisions with our character.
And even if you, are a kid reading this, like, there's a gap between, like, hey, this person that we know this other person idolizes seems like maybe they're bad. And so it kind of softens the blow a bit on that the implication where if this person still supports that other person, then this has implications on what it means for them. So okay. And to our new
point of view.
Point of view. I keep being one ahead. I'm so sorry.
You keep trying to skip things.
I'm sorry. Point of view, it's
you have
Jess.
A structure for a reason, Robin. No, I'm kidding.
I'm sorry. I don't know what's going wrong today. Point of view, trauma, and aftermath. All right. The point of view for the gaslighting, we have Jess. The gaslighting happens to Jess. It also happens to a bunch of other people, but
Jess is our point of view for the majority of the story.
Yeah. But the person we were talking about with the kidnapping, we don't get that person's perspective. And that definitely, affects our other ratings for, care and gratuity, because the person who is dealing with this kidnapping isn't our point of view character. So we only have however much Jess gets to see of this event.
Right.
They aren't around each other all the time. And it's been being dealt with for a while before Jess's life intersects with this other person's.
Yeah.
And then for Jess, with the betrayal, she's being betrayed and we get her perspective.
Yeah.
All right. Now, in order, trope spotter.
Yes.
Okay. So, trope spotter is our relatively new segment where we talk about a trope that's in the book, at least briefly. So this one is broken pedestal. That's the idea that someone whom the protagonist idolizes turns out to be despicable. This is tied into our betrayal, but it is, in this particular thing I'm thinking of for the example, it's not actually the person we talked about in our betrayal segment. But yeah, and, I like, this is a trope. It's, it kind of goes along with the warning, like, don't meet your heroes. Like, this broken pedestal is when you find out that someone you really, really looked up to is just garbage.
Yeah.
Not great. Yeah. What was your favorite non-traumatic thing about the book?
Without spoilers, there's a certain character who I really like how their power works. Oh, no, actually, okay, still without spoilers, I'm going to put a different one. I love the implications in the book that their method of measuring superheroes and villains into classes is so useless and disconnected from the reality of those people's lives. Now, I don't know if it's entirely non-traumatic because it is used as a tool to force people into things the government wants them to do. But the concept to me that they went, we know how powers work. If you can do this, you're in this one. And then we have canon evidence in the book of people who are just like, oh yeah, they rated me C class, but like, I mean, I do this all the time. This is all day for me. And it's like, wait, you what? But you're A class. Well, don't tell them that. They don't even know who I am. Like, it's so funny. It's really great. It feels like the book equivalent to like someone being like, well, you know, I'm okay with computers. And then if at work, they're like, I kind of know what I'm doing. I can fix it for you if you like in a pinch, if we really can't pay another human to. And then they go home and have like edit and modified every game they've ever played, like in the code themselves without looking anything up. And it's like, yeah, okay, sure, buddy. Like, you just don't want them to know. Yeah, accurate. It was really entertaining to me. And
there was enough of it that it was like, is this a plot hole or is the government just very incompetent?
And we get the government is incompetent and also people are doing this deliberately. Like we get that feel. It's highly amusing.
Yep.
What was yours?
Mine is someone trying to be two different people for no reason other than to, okay, charitably, there is a reason, and it does make sense, and it's a teen's best reaction to handling this situation. Uncharitably, needed it in order to make the vaguely sitcom-y romance plot thing happen.
Yeah.
I'm totally cool with either. Like, I just, you know, I liked it. I think it's really funny. The like sheer just incredulity of trying to do that and mostly have it work is part of what I like about it, but it's also extremely ridiculous to the point that I was talking about this book with someone and they were like, so was the romance the main plot or were the superheroes the main plot? And I was like, I think the superheroes are the series arc, but I think the romance might have been the main plot of this book. So there's that. Like, it's sweet and cute and it's funny. It's just like, oh my goodness, that is ridiculous. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will catch you in a fortnight. All music used in this podcast was created by Nicole as Heartbeat Art Co. and is used with permission. Our transcriptionist is Heather. Follow her on Twitter at MamaDragon20. We're proud members of the Certain Point of View Network. Find all the CPOV shows at www.certainpov.com. You can contact us on Twitter at BooksThatBurn or by email at booksthatburn@yahoo.com. Please consider leaving us a tip at ko-fi.com/booksthatburn or becoming a monthly supporter on patreon.com/booksthatburn. All patrons get access to our upcoming book list, bonus content, including the second half of all interviews, and will receive a one-time shout-out. To get updates on our written reviews, recent episodes, and newly completed transcripts, subscribe to our fortnightly newsletter at buttondown.email/booksthatburn. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Pandora, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please leave us a review wherever you're listening. This helps people to find the show. Thanks for listening. We'll be back in 2 weeks.